So let's start with a quick crash course in sort of like how sales happen. I think there are 3 different phases. They're related, but they're completely different. And I actually think each one requires its own strategy. And I think a lot of times people lump them all together, and I like to look at them separately. The way I see it is the 3 phases are: the first phase is the sort of awareness and discovery phase. How do people find you? If you're not getting discovered, you're not going to make sales. The second phase is how do the people that discover you and find you connect with you? I call it the connection phase. Do they follow you? Do they get on your email list, et cetera? And the third phase is the monetization or conversion phase, right? It's those people who connected with you, getting them to actually buy. I think people tend to look at this collectively and they go, oh, this isn't working, or how do I improve it? I think you want to analyze each one separately. So I would take a look and go, from an awareness and discovery standpoint only, how are people finding me? How many people are finding me? Am I having a problem with getting discovered? And by the way, you may have problems with all 3 of these. You may have problems with 1 or 2 of them, but I think it's really helpful to go, what is my strategy to get people who don't know I exist to discover me? And how can I optimize that? And is that working? Then I would look at that second piece and go, okay, I'm getting roughly X amount of people a month to discover me. How many of them are actually connecting to me? Joining my email list, becoming followers. What is my strategy to take a person who happens to come across my blog post, my Pinterest post, my Instagram, whatever ways I have that they discover me, what's my strategy to convert them into connecting to me? And is that working? Is that not working? How can that be improved? Again, you're sort of looking at it in a vacuum. Then the third one is most people that are going to buy from you, especially with a higher ticket item, they're rarely going to buy just because they found you. They're rarely going to go from discovery to purchase. But really, I'm focused on how am I converting the people that are connected to me into buyers? What is my specific strategy to do that? Whereas I think a lot of people don't necessarily have one other than they follow me and once in a while I promote my stuff. But getting more specific about that and what does that conversion look like? Is that working well for me? How can I improve it? Am I having a problem there? Pulling those pieces apart and looking at them separately will help you identify. And again, you may have problems in all 3 and everything can always be improved, whatever, but it'll help you identify if your sales are slowing. Your question in some ways is going straight to, maybe I need to refresh the product. Maybe it's too expensive. Maybe it's whatever. It's really important to keep in mind that if people aren't buying, it has nothing to do with the product because they haven't seen the product. Most likely your product is not outdated, but even if it was, it doesn't matter because that's not what's preventing them to buy. If they're not buying, it's either because they're not discovering you, they're not connecting to you, or they're not converting. It's not the product itself. It may be the packaging, the messaging of the product, your promotional efforts. You know, you're in the gardening space. Like, it doesn't change that rapidly. Like, the advice you gave 5 years ago is probably the same advice you would give now. So I would not feel like, oh, I need to redo it. And even if you did, even if you completely revamp the whole thing, the assumption that that is now going to boost sales, it's probably not, because they're not buying. They don't know what the product is, right? Other than what you say about it. So I would look at each of those sort of phases individually. And then within them, a couple of things to think about, right? If you have an awareness or discovery problem, like I would think about, what else can you do to get in front of people, right? How are they discovering you? From a conversion standpoint, I think this is really important. What percentage of your audience that's connected to you is converting, and has that decreased? So and you can do this based on email lists, social followers, whatever sort of how you want to do it. Let's just take email lists, for example. If 3 years ago, 5% of your email list was buying from you, that'd be high. I'm not suggesting it should be that, but if 5% was buying 3 years ago and now 1% are buying, that's worth thinking about. Why are the people that are connected with you now not buying and they used to? It's a conversion problem. If before, when you would get, I'm making this up, if before you had an Instagram following of 50,000 people and you had a 5,000 person email list, and now you have 100,000 Instagram followers, but your email list is still only 6,000. Why are all those new Instagram people not subscribing to your newsletter? It's a connection problem. How can you amp that up? If those numbers are staying consistent, roughly, then that hasn't changed. And it's probably more of an awareness. You need more people in, right? It's not that you're not converting. It's just that you need more, you're not bringing in enough people. Your growth has slowed down. So I think looking at each piece separately can really help.